To begin this Woodcraft and Camping series, we're going to take a look at the tools that Nessmuk brought with him into the outdoors. It's consisted of a small double-bit pocket axe, a fixed-blade belt knife, and a double-blade folding knife. This has been highly argued upon as to whether or not these three tools are sufficient for the outdoorsman to be able to complete any and all camp tasks. Today we're going to have a look at these tools, see exactly how they work and the thought behind them, and I'll give my thoughts at the end as to whether or not these three tools are sufficient enough for the modern outdoorsman. In the book Woodcraft and Camping, we're given an illustration depicting Nessmuk's tools. He states that he likes the double-bit pocket axe because he wants one thick stunt edge for knots, deer bones, etc., and a fine keen edge for cutting clear timber. His belt knife is thin in the blade and handy for skinning, cutting meat, or eating with. And the strong double-bladed pocket knife, in connection with the sheath knife, is all sufficient for camp use. So with just three simple tools similar to what I have here with this small double-bit hatchet, the fixed blade knife, and the folding knife, he was able to confidently go into the outdoors, and no matter what tasks he faced, he would be able to accomplish those tasks with these tools. Now I think it's important to note that Nessmuk was a sportsman. He was a hunter, he was a fisherman, and a lot of the tasks that his tools faced revolved around processing game. And it's important to not get too hung up on the exact details of the tools. For instance, this knife here has a Scandinavian grind on it. It is quite suitable for wood carving, but when it comes to processing animals, this is not the knife that I would use. The thin edge would chip and dull very quickly as soon as it starts to come into contact with bone, whereas something like this knife right here, which is another fixed blade knife, but it has a secondary bevel on it, and it's going to hold up a lot better, and just the blade geometry too lends itself to be a lot more of a skinning knife. So when you get down to trying to figure out which knife is perfect for your needs, everyone's going to have a different answer, and those aren't the details that get hung up on when we're talking about the Nessmuk trio. It's actually quite ingenious what he's come up with here. He has three tools, but 5 different blades, and each blade has a different purpose. For instance, he notes with his double-bit hatchet that he likes 2 different types of edges on it for different purposes, which lends it to be a lot more versatile than something like this with just the one edge. I'm not going to be going into depth on hatchet types, different weights, their different purposes versus his double bit and what my preference is. I'm actually going to be doing that next episode. In this episode, I just want to focus on the trio itself and the thought behind it. I will talk a little bit more about knife selection. So Nessmuk carried his 2 knives, his belt knife and his folding pocket knife. When it comes to selecting the type of knife that you carry, it should focus on what you plan to do with that knife. Now for Nessmuk, he said that his knife was thin in the blade and optimal for skinning, and again, he was a sportsman. He had a large need of a tool to process the game that he got. Whereas for me, I do a lot of camping outside of open season for game, so I don't need to always have a butchering knife with me. Instead, I opt for a knife like this, which has a Scandinavian grind, which is quite optimal for woodworking and wood carving, which I do a lot of. It's something I really enjoy, and at pretty much every camp that I go to, I find myself using my knife to process and shape pieces of wood. So this knife suits my needs quite nicely. A large knife like this would not. While this is a butcher's knife and would be optimal for processing game, this is not going to be very effective, or at least not nearly as effective as my Scandinavian ground knife at processing and shaping wood. So the knife selection really comes down to what you need from your knife. And I don't think it should be understated how beneficial it can be to have a second knife in your kit. Nessmuk carried a folding knife similar to this. His only had 2 blades. This one's actually a 4-blade, but he had a double-bladed folding pocket knife. And there's a bunch of different styles and shapes that you can get, and again, it depends on what you need from that tool. For instance, this one right here I've used a lot over the years. It's got 2 blades, which is really nice to have. I typically use this one as a eating knife for cutting my meals and eating. And this one here is just a single blade, but very thin blade, but optimal for carving. This one here has a short blade, which is really nice for carving, and then a larger blade as well, and then a couple smaller ones which are pretty much dedicated towards carving. And it doesn't even have to be a folding knife. You can opt for something else, like this smaller fixed blade knife. And again, this is a Scandinavian ground knife. Very, very good for wood carving. So there's a lot of options out there, but having that second blade adds a lot of extra versatility to your kit because you have that extra blade or blades to fall back on. And your blades can be different shapes, different sizes, have different profiles on them, depending on what exactly you're using them for. So while it will vary from person to person as to what kind of hatchet you carry, the weight of the head, the length of the handle, the type of steel or the type of knife you carry, the blade length, the grind, the type of steel, I think what really needs to be taken away from the trio is how much versatility and functionality you can get out of so few tools. I've seen people carry saws, an axe, a hatchet, a carving knife, a large belt knife, an eating knife, all into the same camp thinking they need all these tools to be able to accomplish their needs in the outdoors, when with 3 simple tools like this you're able to accomplish all of that. And I think that's what the Nessmuk trio represents. It's 3 simple tools, but you've got 5 different blades that all have a different purpose and are able to serve all of your necessary camp functions. So this trio represents doing more with less and thinking your kit through in such a way that you're minimizing what you have to bring with you while still maintaining all the versatility and function that you need. The fact that this 3-item toolkit was written about over 100 years ago and is still being talked about today, I think is pretty incredible. So, do I think that this trio of tools is enough for the modern woodsman? Personally, I think so. I think that any skilled woodsman would be able to take these 3 items and have no issues at all going out into the woods and getting by very proficiently with them, actually. Now, that's not to say that I don't have my concerns, and I'd say the largest concern that I have revolves around the small pocket axe and facing large timber. Here in the northern bush we do have some pretty big timber, and getting through it with this little hatchet would certainly be no easy task. And I guess that's where people begin to get into the argument over the hatchet versus a saw. Nessmuk doesn't mention saws in Woodcraft and Camping, and I think the reason for that is back then saws were large, heavy, cumbersome, and just too bulky to be carried in the outdoors. And if the purpose behind his tools were to be versatile, a saw really doesn't offer much in versatility. A saw is really good for making cross cuts, and that's about it, bucking up wood. Whereas a hatchet, you can chop, you can carve, you can split, you can even butcher, you can do all kinds of things with the hatchet. So if you're looking to get the most versatility out of your kit, a hatchet is certainly going to be better than a saw. So for those that think a saw can replace a hatchet, I simply don't agree with you on that. If you gave me the choice between heading into the outdoors with a saw or a hatchet as my main wood processing tool, I'm going to pick the hatchet every single time. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that there is a place in your kit for a saw. I often carry and use a saw to process my firewood to get it into manageable lengths, and certainly it makes life in the outdoors a lot easier. And with modern technology, modern saws, they are very light and compact. I just don't think that a saw should replace a hatchet or axe from your kit. So my final thoughts on the Nessmuk trio: I really like it. I think that it is a really good tool kit. It's 3 simple tools that offer a wide range of versatility, and any skilled woodsman should be able to take those 3 tools into the outdoors and have no issues completing any and all camp tasks. In the next episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at the double bit hatchet that he spoke so highly of. I want to thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.